FH, kontingen bahasa Inggrisnya, udah hadir belum ya?
FH lengkap yang Inggris.
Oke. Oke. Karena sudah melakukan roll call, maka saya serahkan pada CA untuk melakukan match up dan mosi rilis. Terima kasih.
Yep, thank you MC. So, kita bakal ada kayak kemarin lagi, kita bakal ada site allocation. So, buat grand final English debate. Bentar, oke, I'm gonna share screen. Oke, kita bakal start dari English debate. So, English debate is FAB versus FH. FAB broke higher, so you can choose head or tails.
Heads.
Right. Okay. It's tails, so FAB is gonna be up, FH is gonna be go. And then for the third place, the English debate is FT versus F psychology. Psychology broke higher, so you can choose.
Head.
Right, head. So psychology is gonna be government, technique is gonna be up. Now for debat bahasa Inggris, yeah. Sorry, maksudnya debat bahasa Indonesia, FEB dan FH. FEB broke higher for grand final, jadi boleh pilih head or tails.
Kita milih head deh.
Is head. Jadi FEB bakal jadi gov, FH bakal jadi off. Buat third place, FPsi and Fasilkom broke higher. You can pick head or tails.
Dari sisi Fasilkom pilih kepala Kak. Head.
Okay. Right, it's head. Jadi Fasilkom is gonna be gov, FPsi is gonna be off. Bentar ya, drawnya is being finalized. Bentar ya, the draw is still like being finalized by the tab team. So sekitar 5 menitan lagi.
Okay, so we have the draw for the grand final and perebutan juara 3 for English debate and debat bahasa Indonesia. So this is the draw for grand final debat bahasa Indonesia. You can just take a screenshot, and this is the draw for perebutan juara 3 bahasa Indonesia. And this is the draw for grand finals English debate. And this is the draw for third place English debate. Okay, so with that being said, we're just going to move on to the motion launch for today's grand final and perebutan juara 3 debat bahasa Indonesia and English debate on OE 2021. So today we're going to talk about something very cool, travel back to the future. So this is the theme for on OE 2021, and we'll be talking about this in this round. So for this particular round, we have a context slide actually. So context slide number 1. You're a scientist who invented time travel, and you traveled using the time machine, hoping to find a utopic future, but you're soon made aware that the world as we know it will be decimated in 20 years. No one else knew about this news, nor can they create time machines on their own. Oke, in bahasa Indonesia, Anda adalah seorang ilmuwan yang menemukan perjalanan waktu. Anda bereksplorasi menggunakan mesin waktu dan berharap akan menemukan masa depan yang utopis, namun Anda tidak lama kemudian sadar bahwa dunia yang kita ketahui ini akan berakhir dalam 20 tahun. Dan tidak ada orang lain yang mengetahui berita ini, dan tidak ada orang lain yang mungkin menciptakan mesin waktu sendiri. Okay, there's another context slide. Okay, next context slide for motion number 3. Humanity has invented a technology that allows humans to live consciously in their sleep. Once they sleep, their consciousness will be transferred to another virtual world where they are fully conscious and fully aware of their actions. This virtual world can be different or similar to their real world, depending on how the user wants the world to be. For the sake of this debate, the technology is called the two lives technology. In Indonesian, it reads, manusia telah menemukan suatu teknologi yang memungkinkan manusia untuk hidup secara sadar dalam tidur. Saat mereka tidur, kesadaran yang ditransfer ke dunia virtual, di mana sepenuhnya sadar terhadap perbuatan mereka. Dunia virtual ini dapat menjadi serupa atau berbeda dari dunia asli mereka, tergantung pada bagaimana pengguna menginginkan hidup mereka. Dan ini dinamakan teknologi dua kehidupan. Okay, you can screenshot both of these context slides. So I'm going to give 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm just going to go back to the context slide number 1. So you can screenshot this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the motion reads number 1 for English. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so number 1 reads the House will disclose the news. Number 2 reads the House prefers a world where policies are designed and executed by an artificial intelligence. And number 3 reads the House will allow individuals to access the tools technology. For English, for Indonesian, the first one is Dewan ini akan menyebarkan berita tersebut. Yang kedua, Dewan ini memilih dunia di mana kebijakan disusun dan dieksekusi oleh sebuah kecerdasan buatan. Dan ketiga, Dewan ini akan memperbolehkan individu untuk mengakses teknologi dua kehidupan. So, is there any questions for this impromptu motion? I'm going to give around 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, seeing no questions. Okay, so your motion preference time starts now.
Baik, terima kasih CA atas sarannya. Seluruh peserta boleh masuk ke breakout room masing-masing untuk melakukan motion preference, lalu lanjut ke case building dan debat. Terima kasih.
Hello, is everyone here yet? Ini untuk tim government sama opposition sudah lengkap nih? Oke.
Government sudah lengkap, Kak.
Oke. Oke, government lengkap, opposition sudah lengkap. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the final round. Before we begin the case building session, I'm going to ask you to send your motion preference to me. You can send it directly via Zoom chat, and also the list of speaker. Okay, just wait a second. In the case building session, I'm going to ask you to send your motion preference to me. You can send it directly via Zoom chat, and also the list of speaker. Okay, just wait a second. Okay. So from the motion preference, we are going to use the second motion, which is the South prefers a world where policies are designed and executed by an artificial intelligence. Okay. So from the motion preference, we are going to use the I'm going to start the case building session. Before we start the case building session, I'm going to have to ask from both teams to turn on their camera during the case building session. All right. And the case building session. Oh, please wait a second. Right. The case building session starts from 30 minutes. competition. My name is Sukman Alkias Ardito, and today I'm going to be the moderator as well as the timekeeper for this debate round. For this debate round, the motion that we are going to debate is the second motion, which is this house prefers a world where policies are designed and executed by an artificial intelligence. Right. Um, from the government team, we have the team from the Faculty of Psychology with Ms. Salsabila as the first and reply speaker, Mr. Faisal as the second speaker, Ms. Reka as the third speaker. And then from the opposition team, we have Mr. Christopher as the first speaker and reply speaker, and Mr. Nicholas as the second speaker. And for the third speaker, we have Mr. Gilfran. Before we begin the debate, I'm gonna read some of the rules for today, just to quickly remind you. The first rule is each representative speaker will deliver the speech for 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Reply speaker will only deliver it for 4 minutes and 20 seconds. As the chairman, I will ask you what form of POI would you choose during your speech. Therefore, I'm going to ask from the government team, which form of POI would you choose?
Just verbal. So unmuting the mic and say BOI.
Okay. Unmute, yeah. And for the opposition team, which form of POI?
Hi, I think the speakers are going to tell you the preferred POI method
alright.
before they start the speech. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alvin.
Okay. Moving on, yeah. On the substantive speaker, I will send a chat via Zoom once the first minute to indicate that POIs are open, when the POIs are closed on the 7 minute, and then time's over when it's already 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay. Before we begin, I'm going to check the connection from both teams. Can the government team check your connection, please?
Let's just skip that and let the speakers check their connection before they start their speech, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. But I do need to check if my panelists are here, though. Ricky and Einstein, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Einstein is here.
Okay, Sip.
Okay. All right, so let's just without further ado, let's start the debate for today. Therefore, I call upon the first speaker from the government team, Ms. Salsabila. Oh, sorry. Wait a second. I will open this publication. Right.
Okay, my preferred pronoun is she or her, and POI, just unmuting yourself and say POI. I'm gonna start my speech. Oh wait, am I audible? Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Madam Chair, human emotions is a double-edged sword. Like, yes, true, empathy can be good, but at the same time, empathy can also be detrimental towards how people create policy making and towards how people execute that policy to begin with. We believe that we want to detach all of this policy making and the execution of this policy making from human emotions, because we believe that regardless what kind of human emotions that you have is going to be detrimental, right? Therefore, what we want is to let AI to have control over policy making and the execution of that policy. So what the world will look like in our of the house. Number one, we believe that the policy making and execution in and on itself going to be controlled by AI, right? We're talking about a non-sentient AI where they're going to base their decision based on the existing data and research that's been done, right? So we believe that all the decision in our of the house is going to be more logical and doesn't include any all sorts of human sentiments that they have under the of the house. But the second thing is, I feel like when it comes to policy, we're talking about any kind of policy that exists in that country. For instance, like economical policy, social policy, law, and all of those stuff. It's gonna be created by AI. It's also going to be executed by AI. For instance, like the judge or the police gonna be created by gonna be changed to AI too, because we believe that it's gonna be pointless if the policymakers if the executors also have emotions too, right? The third thing is we believe that there's still human intervention in the form of like the creation of the AI, the coding, the surveillance of the AI. So if there is an error, for instance, humans still need to fix it and all the stuff. But we believe that we're trying our best to create the most perfect AI that is functional. So
I have two things that I'm gonna explain on my speech. Number one, I'm gonna talk about human emotion is inherently why human emotion is inherently detrimental towards the policy making, and secondly, how the implementation gonna look like in our side of the house, right? So go to the first, how emotion is detrimental towards the policy making, the execution. We believe that emotion in and on itself is something that is unattachable from human, right? And we believe that this is something that is bad because when it comes to decision making, regardless how logical, regardless how rational they are, they're still gonna include their emotion and their sentiments towards it, ladies and gentlemen. And I feel like this is bad because when it comes to policy making, your policy making affects all people within the country, for instance, or within the community, and you need policy that can exactly, cater to all without any intervention of human sentiment that can be really discriminative, can be really biased to begin with, right? How does it look like in status quo right now? Firstly, when it comes to policy making, there's so many things that happening, right? For instance, like policy like RUU PKS, where there's so many bureaucracy, it takes a really long time because people who decide the policy are really are putting their selfish interests first because they are influenced by patriarchy, for instance. They're trying to prevent this policy to be passed because they think that this is too liberal and doesn't align with their own, value, for instance. We believe that this is inherently bad because when we're talking about like RUPKs, it's exactly really important because many people currently are sexually abused and they still are suffering because they don't get the justice that they deserve to begin with because of this intervention of human emotion that lets this policy making from happening, right? But the second thing is the execution of the policy is also really bad under the side of the house because people who works as the executor of the policy, for instance, the judges, the policies, are not the police are not doing their job as are not doing their job correctly, right? Because of this human emotion that they actually have. Firstly, they have biases. For instance, they have sentiment towards the minority because maybe they have, conflict with them in the past, or maybe they grow up with this sentiment from their family that black people are criminals, or Chinese are and uh, and that like Asians are, criminals and all of this stuff. We believe that we believe that this is bad because what happened is, for instance, when it comes to law, like black people receive more punishment than white for the same crime, ladies and gentlemen. And this is exactly something that is bad to begin with, right? We believe that the result at the end of the day, either way, misconduct still gonna happen because of this human intervention, human sentiment intervention on this policy making to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. And what happened under the side of the house, all of their interests to protect the vulnerable through this policy are not going to be achievable. But let's assume that they say that people are still controllable in the sense that there is still counterbalance in society and stuff like that. We believe that this is not going to work. Because firstly, what you need to understand, the criticization of policymakers and executors in their side of the house is people in power, which means that firstly, you cannot really go against them because you don't have any sort of bargaining power to actually, oppose them, for instance, because they are rich, because they are politicians, because they have power in the country. But secondly, when we're talking about human sentiment, sometimes it's really hard for you to detach yourself from that human sentiment because you grow up with it, because you already learned from it from since you're a child and you already internalized that value. That's why
I think the speaker disconnected.
Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
I'm gonna pause it first.
We chatted the first speaker up. She should be back soon.
Okay.
okay. May I know tadi berhentinya di mana ya?
I think the last sentence that I noted: human sentiments are not detachable. And
Okay, okay.
yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna continue from that then. The problem is human sentiments are really unattachable because it's something that you already internalized since you're very child. That's why people are still being so homophobic, being so racist, even though there's so many campaign that tries to counter that kind of sentiment to begin with. We believe that it is unachievable under the SAP the house. So how does the implementation gonna look like in our SAP the house? We believe that we're going to use AI. So the AI on the SAP the house going to base their decision making, for instance, when it comes to policy making, on the existing research and data that actually happening on the ground to begin with. For instance, like RUU PKS, they're going to recognize how there's so many people who becomes the victim of sexual assault and abuse, and they recognize how the existing policy in status quo are not currently working to actually cater to that. Therefore, they can calculate and see whether like RUU PKS can actually be effective or not because they are logical and they don't put any sort of human sentiment that gonna prevent them from doing so. But I feel like also the implementation of the policy, for instance, like the execution in and of itself, gonna be really fair because regardless of their identity, for instance, they're still gonna apply the policy as fairly as possible because they don't have the sentiment like the biases that humans have. It because this AI only have one job, which is to do their job accordingly, according to the system and all of those stuff. So black people not gonna get more punishment for the same crime as white, right? Because they don't have those existing, sentiment. Let's assume that government gonna say that this AI gonna be controlled by government, and therefore, if the government is bad, they can make the AI be really discriminative and really oppressive. We believe no, because firstly, we believe that government has the interest to be elected again. It means that they won't actually do do this sort of thing. But secondly, if they do this sort of injustice, I feel like there will be intervention from the United Nations because they see that there's so many injustice. Exactly why UN trying to actually intervene like Palestine because they see so many unjust war happening. Right? We believe that it's something that is gonna be possible in our sub house, and therefore I'm happy to propose.
Okay, thank you for the speech from the first speaker from the government team. That spent 7 minutes and 37 seconds. Now I call upon the first speaker from the opposition team, Mr. Christopher.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If you want to appeal, I just try to put in the chat, and I will see if I can give the opportunity. Okay. With that, I will continue on to my speech in 3, 2, 1. We live in a world where problems are complex and constantly evolving instantaneously. We don't think that AI is a good solution to being the executor of policies, of deciding world affairs and the lives of peoples directly. We will stick with the status quo. What we as opposition only need to prove is why it's not needed and possibly harmful for the government AI to be an executor of policy. That's all we need to prove. So moving on, I'll clarify with some points of models. First, is this likely going to be an AI that is adopted by the government because the government is the only authority to have the ability to actually execute policies, not just from a general perspective, but also directly execute them on the ground. And what this means is that the AI is likely going to be separated based on the internal national resources. And this are just a few things. AI is a developed technology, which means it's going to be limited to the capabilities of people who designed it. That means that any benefit of the AI being impartial is likely going to be marginal because the system is inherently designed by humans and thus also prone to misdesign by human errors, which I will clarify in some further points. So next, let's take a closer look into this AI. So this AI is an extension of technology, which means it's in of itself at best based on a data model that represents the real world, but incapable of knowing the real world directly in the sense of the magnitude of data that exists and at the rate at which it's produced. If government is going to say, no, the AI is going to be able to look at real-time data of the entire world, what you're looking at is an authoritarian dystopia where there is no privacy of data and information, and that there will be a single authoritative member or organization that has the access to the global power of information. And we believe that is simply unjust and a perverse abuse of power. So, what kind of policies this is going to be used for the AI? This is going to be for things such as food distribution, war deals, and legal rights, putting, as government said, putting soldiers, cops, and judges, which means that this is going to directly have consequences on people's lives on the moment, that once you see a mistake and you correct it, the mistake has already been done. Thousands of people on the ground have already been harmed and killed. And because there is nothing that can keep the AI in check and balance as fast as the AI can process and execute that data. Okay? Second of all, this debate does not exist in a vacuum, which the government has not considered. There are going to be multiple parties of interest involved. Is that first, the world is very dynamic. Just because an AI has planned something to be executed doesn't mean that it will go in the way that is planned and that the approach is always going to be dynamic. For example, when we're in the coronavirus time, even though there are clear vaccine mandates, we don't know how the number will rise and fall. And the best choice of what to do is always changing from moment to moment. I just don't see how it can be any more optimized than AI than what people are already doing these days. Second of all, there's the interest of governments. We agree with government that governments in real life are probably not going to be perfect, but this is exactly why we should not let them utilize AI as an executor of policies. Because first, these AIs is probably going to be a way to compete for who has the best capability of handling data, and a way to have a war of technology in a global power scale. And this is also going to be involved in international affairs, which is dangerous because there is ego that is going to play with people who design and maintain these AI systems, and also the security of these AI systems. Internally, the governments are probably going to use this to keep power over the people. The current party in voting in place who is currently holding this AI is probably going to utilize it to keep power, because exactly that the governments are biased and egotistical people. We can often see it today when political opinions are manipulating algorithms on social media to change the public perspective on what is going on in the political sphere. And second of all, there's a huge dependence on data. And if government cannot run away by saying that the AI is able to have access to accurate representation of real life without inherently impeding on people's personal data. And this leads to the external trends that are probably going to occur. First is that there's a constantly growing concern for personal data, which means people that do not agree with this AI will exist. And that means that, second of all, there will be humanitarian concerns. Most people are unlikely to be safe having their lives dictated by AI, because it just feels like you're being enslaved by robot overlords. This means that there's likely going to be a massive public backlash. For example, China's social credit system, which is a system inherently built upon a foundation where technology is utilized by the government to run what they believe is to be the most best and optimal way to run their people, leading to exclusion of certain communities as Uyghur, as we see. And government wants to claim the benefit that, oh, if the AI does something we don't think is right, we can just edit it. But if the AI decides that you have to redirect resources away from specific community to harm that will harm them and care to the benefit of majority, and if you can just edit that, isn't that just an extension of your own ego, your own human decision? We don't see how it's going to, how AI is exclusive in being absolutely detached from human emotion, because inherently it has to be maintained by people. Second of all, it is impossible to cater to everyone. That is the nature of the world, be it humans or an AI decision. And because they're human emotions, there will always be people who are dissatisfied against the policies that may be, decided with AI. So people can just attack the AI because the difference between protesting against a government which is made up of people and protesting a government which is made up of robotic AI is that people don't care about hurting robotic AIs. And what's likely going to happen is that for the government to keep people in check, they're probably going to make, even more authoritative ways of keeping people in check, like in China's Uyghur system. Finally, we just don't think it's fair because democracy is based on the separation of powers, because keeping power separate keeps accountability. What happens when you put everything in AI is that all the cops, judges, power, and authority is concentrated and thus more risky because it's held by a single government. And that is why we believe that AI is probably only going to exacerbate the harms that are already existent in the government. And we should make sure we can keep it accountable by buffering human bureaucraticism in between. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the first speaker from the opposition team. That's 7 minutes and 37 seconds. Next, I call upon the second speaker from the government team, Mr. Faisal.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Before I get into my arguments, I will start by making rebuttals. The opposition team said that the AI cannot follow the changes of the world fast enough for them to be able to adapt. Well, we believe that this problem also exists on the opposition side because humans are inherently less intelligent than AI, meaning that whenever new information arrives, they will be less able to update those new information. Now, the opposition also said that AI is still developing, so their abilities are limited, and it's also designed to humans that are prone to errors. Well, we believe that this is unlikely to happen because we'll make sure that the AI will be developed enough before we put them into policy making, right? Now, and their idea of the AI being broken and erroring is also untrue because we need to remember that my Prime Minister stated that these AI will be overseen, and we will make sure that there are technicians and programmers that can fix these AI if they malfunction. And even if this AI isn't too developed, we believe that this isn't fully bad. We believe that the AI being not too developed will give an incentive for the government to further make the AI better, which will in turn benefit everyone because AI isn't just for the needs of the government but for the people in also many other aspects of life. The opposition preached the idea that this will annihilate the idea of privacy of data, and people might believe that they are being enslaved by AI. Now, opposition, first of all, they haven't explained how exactly AI will take our personal privacy, and they haven't explained why this will happen on our side. And we believe that AI will not be authoritarian. People take as a part of the government too, which I will explain later in my argument, which will make sure that they will not believe that they will be enslaved by AI. Opposition tried to bring the idea of China's social credit score because by saying that it's just in the end fulfilling the Chinese government's idea to control the people. We believe that this is different because unlike the current government, which is full of people, these robots will not, like my prime minister said, they will not have vested interest. Now, they also said that AI has planned something, it doesn't mean it'll go smoothly because human responses are unpredictable. True, but they can be informed on human responses, right? And since they're very advanced, they will know the correct responses to it. Not to mention that they will be able to deal with these unpredictabilities and unpredictable changes effectively because how fast they receive and assess information, and there's an urgency to assess information, right? We believe that all the problems that the opposition has stated also exist on their side, but even worse. Now, onto my argument. It is very first of all, it is very important to understand that good policy making and executing requires something or someone that is well informed and most intelligent. In that case, that is the AI. This argument is correct because they will be able to work all information from database and research papers from all around the world, meaning that they will be equipped with facts and knowledge that have been reviewed, agreed upon, and published officially. They will be able to update their information as soon as new knowledge arrives, meaning that they will be much more up to date than humans. This argument is important because the problems with the government and the law enforcement is that a lot of people are old, right? Sometimes too old to keep up with the pace of the changes in the current society. Like my prime minister stated, there's no such thing as a moral right or wrong. So what we seek here is relevancy of justice. Even if all people on the government can read news and get up to date with the present culture, they might still be biased to keep their old ways because that is what they grew up with. And humans are usually held into those things. As an example, people who are old are inclined to be more equipped with homophobic and sexist values because that is just the trend of the past. Even if such thing is regarded as bad in the present, these old politicians make half of them internalized. However, this isn't applies to AI. AI don't have emotional connection to values and informations. So once they are not relevant anymore, there's no incentive for them to hold on to it. Once they're uploaded with new and relevant information, they will understand that this information is what is now relevant and it is what they should base their judgments into. So we won't have any government setting up rules and policies that are not up to date with the current culture. The problem with humans also is that even without any vested interest, they can still make wrong decisions out of ignorance and lack of knowledge, correct? With the fast, no thank you for the PI, with the fast pacing of information flow, it is undeniable that they're going to miss a thing or two that might be important in decision making. Even if someone tries their hardest to keep up with info, there are hoaxes everywhere, right? Which is hard to differentiate between truth or lies. But it's simply, it is hard for people to know what is true and what it isn't. It takes time for us to learn, let alone remember things, but not for robots. Their system is just that advanced that learning is a simple thing for them. It can be done in the blink of an eye. As an example to this, let's say there's been cases of police brutality against minorities. Someone in policy making might not be racist inherently, right? But it's very likely for them to just not know enough about the facts, to just not know about racial problems in the country, so that they wouldn't make policies about police brutality. This wouldn't happen with AI because they will be equipped and they will have access to all information across the world. Now, this argument is exclusive to our side of the house because there's just no way humans can learn all current existing knowledge and upcoming information in the same pacing of an AI, correct? Now, the worst case scenario is what if what the information they receive is hoax? We believe that this will not happen because information they want will not just come from the internet. They will not just come from blogs, but they will be received from accredited and reviewed data and information from researchers and database from reliable places. Now, on to my next argument is the worst case scenario. That is that the AI is going to be controlled by a dictatorship government, and since they will run with the opposition, they can freely oppress people. This is unlikely to happen. This argument is correct because, as my prime minister stated, this AI will still be monitored by humans. Take a note that these humans will not assess and evaluate policies in and of itself, but rather the work and status of the AI. We believe that since robots don't have any sentience, it means that pretty much impossible for them to turn full Robocop and turn evil on their own will, correct? If they started to turn the government to an authoritarian, then there must be someone behind them. If so, then we can just trace the person that is hacking and modifying programming of these AI. Honorable adjudicators, notice how this arm isn't exclusive on our side. With or without opposition, when a party gets powerful enough, they can control authoritarians authoritatively in the shadows, as an example, Russia and China. So the possibility of dictatorship, the government rising, isn't exclusive to our side. More than that, we believe that this is less of a problem on our side because first, if someone is hacking the robot, then we can trace them, right? And then we can jail the people since it will be a crime. Second, if such a thing arrives, then this will only be a race of programming and hacking, not politics that will have a lot of gray areas that can take decades to solve. We should also remember that the people in the democratic countries are still going to be part of the government. No matter how knowledgeable and intelligent these robots are, they still need to hear what the people want. Like my prime minister stated, their job is not to create an ideal world based on their own visions, but based on the opinions and demands of the people. So the people will still take part and be able to take AI accountable if something happens. Now, this argument is important because we believe that it will create a political situation where the policies are made by AI that is intelligent, well informed, and up to date, while still being overseen by humans who are sentient and can take care of the AI if the AI has malfunctions, creating the perfect balance of sentiency and AI control from humans and the intelligence and well-informedness of the AI. So we believe that although the AI might although now okay, so opposition tried to make the idea that it is important to cater to everyone and this AI will not be able to do it, and some people might end up protesting the AI. Now, first of all, we would like to say that even this problem isn't exclusive on our side. It's also uh, no matter who runs the government, there will always be people who are unsatisfied. But this is better on our side because at least on our side of the house, AI will be able to assess information fairly, and they will be able to judge what is best for the people as a whole. So they will make any biased information to only one side that is unfair to the other side. And for these reasons, I am happy.
Okay, thank you for the second speaker from the government team. It's 7 minutes and 31 seconds. Next, I call upon the second speaker from the opposition team, Mr. Nicholas.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm a little bit lagging right now. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Let me take a moment first. Okay. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Standing here as the second speaker of the opposition side of the House, first would bring some rebuttals toward the government side of the House. Now, first, the first speaker of the government side of the House keeps talking about how the world keeps going on this racism case, PKS, the sexual assault case. This is why humans are not the ideal beings that should make these policies, because humans takes too much time in making policies and so on and so on. Now, we say that for the case of the racism, we say that we believe that racism will happen anyway, also in their side, ladies and gentlemen. Also in their side, ladies and gentlemen. Now we say that racism is not. We say that we believe that racism is not the point of the debate, uh, which which is most of their case they're talking about from just now, because we believe that racism, sexual assault, and any kind of this harmful activities can happen in a area that AI can even reach, ladies and gentlemen. Sexual assault can happen anytime. The government side of the House, we say that the government side of the House didn't explain much on how they will implement this AI policy making in the world, ladies and gentlemen. We say that the point of debate should be on how these AI are different from humans in policy making. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they also talk about how RUU PKS takes so much time in making it. Now, this is the reason. This is why we believe that humans are. This is why we believe that humans are dynamic, ladies and gentlemen. We learn from our mistakes. This is why we have this society representative in the government, ladies and gentlemen. We have this demonstration ongoing on the road, ladies and gentlemen, right now. This is because for the humans to achieve a better humanity, for a better human race, ladies and gentlemen, in policy making or even in their moral, ladies and gentlemen. We say this kind of actions is where the empathy and the emotions that the government side of the House did disregard from humanization. But we say that this is where empathy and emotion of humans takes part works, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the second speaker of the government side of the House also talk about how human are less intelligence from AI. They can dissect all information all at once. We say that humans can learn from humans can learn humans. We say that humans can learn into accepting this information. Humans also can accept all kind of information, not only AI. So we say that AI is not. We say that the second information is not essential on their side, ladies and gentlemen. Now they also say AI will make sure of. We will make sure of this AI. AI is developed enough and has overseen and predicts everything. Now uh, we said that the government side of the House didn't explain much on how this AI will be well developed. How can they say this AI is perfect, ladies and gentlemen? We say the government side of the House didn't explain that much. And now they're also taking in the House, and ladies and gentlemen, where they talk about how humans take part in government in surveillance the AI. We say, ladies and gentlemen, this is not essential also in their side, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, in our side, we believe that it is human surveillance also can take part in our side, ladies and gentlemen. Now the difference is we are surveillancing AI or a human. We believe that humans in surveilling humans, ladies and gentlemen. We say that it is better than watching AI making this policies, ladies and gentlemen. We say that humans can discuss, humans can discuss this about this policy making, ladies and gentlemen. We say that AI is ego enough, and humans only can be slave in their side, ladies and gentlemen. Now, proceeding to my arguments, I will be talking about on how this AI should not be the one who policy make us, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we believe that sticking to the status quo is the best choice for the sake of humanity. We don't see any urgency coming from the government side of the House could bring. They only talk about how effective this AI are, how good this AI are, such without looking the other aspects in policy making, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that in policy making we should have a lot of things considered, ladies and gentlemen. Policy making is a naturally policymaking is a process where you need discussion, you need be realistic, you need rapat so it can uh so the policy making is effective enough, ladies and gentlemen. Now, second, we also don't see any clear reasons why we should listen to AI instead of us humans, ladies and gentlemen. The government side of the house didn't explain that part also. We believe that even though making policies is hard, it takes time and energy, and the result we say that it's not perfect, but we say this flaw is okay because humans, we say that we are dynamic. We are a dynamic being. We grow upon our mistakes. We do mistakes, and we learn from it. This is why we believe that as a race we can progress and evolve to a better one in the future, ladies and gentlemen. It's important because in order to achieve a better world in future, we cannot depend on AI. This AI. This is because we believe that AI didn't have the ability to gain some progress or evolve through time, ladies and gentlemen. Instead, by letting AI rule, we said that this is going to hinder humanity down, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the problem if we're going to take this AI to design and execute these policies is that if the government thinks that emotions interfere the policy making when humans made it up, then static emotionless law will never achieve the goal of a law, ladies and gentlemen, that is justification. We don't even realize that the ones that are going to feel the impact of the loss were human beings with emotions. In no way, judgment always comes from a piece of paper, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, am I still audible?
Oh yeah, you were disconnected for a while. Please continue.
Oh, okay. May I know where I stopped?
The last sentence I noted is that the people that are impacted are humans with emotions as well, something along that line.
Oh, okay. 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 Uh, I'm going to continue in 3, 2, 1. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that AI should not be the one uh who makes decision upon ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Now, first, we believe that humans are the one who created AI, ladies and gentlemen, and we say that AI should not be the one who controls the humans, ladies and gentlemen. We say that even if this AI is going to make a very good policies, we say that there are a lot of problems that can that can cause by the AI, ladies and gentlemen, which is my first speaker already talk to you about how this authoritarian dystopia could have happened, how this how this personal privacy will be affected on the humans and gentlemen. Now I will explain how this personal privacy is important, ladies and gentlemen. Now, personal privacy, we say that this is a part of human rights, ladies and gentlemen, where every humans have this right on having their own privacy. We say that privacy is an essential thing for humans' life, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we believe that humans' privacy are are essential to humans' life, ladies and gentlemen. When when it is uh, been, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the second speaker from the opposition team that spent 7 minutes and 27 seconds. Moving on to
Sorry, before we continue, can I know the last sentence that the previous speaker stated? I think it got cut off.
I was talking about on how this personal privacy is important, and we as humans should consider it, and it is essential to humans.
All right. Okay. Then I didn't miss anything.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Moving on to the third speaker from the government team, Miss Reika.
Hello. First of all, am I audible?
Yes, you're perfectly audible.
Okay, my preferred pronoun will be she or her, and my POI preference is direct to open mic, of which I will respond depending on time consideration. I will start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. My debate will be structured as such: rebuttal towards a position, priorities and comparison, as well as justification. Our debate's main focus is that the House prefers a world where policies are designed and executed by an AI. First, I would like to generally rebut and argue with the opposition's points. Opposition says that the case like racism will happen on our side of the house, and we're not ignoring that. We are not trying to say that the problems will instantly be solved here, because even if the best policy is created, it doesn't mean that it will lead to a better world instantly. However, by having AI, we believe that the policies will at least be released, and we try to prevent racism from happening in our side of the house. Opposition says we learn from our mistake. We need empathy and emotions. How? Because you haven't mentioned how empathy and emotion works in your side. Humans can learn to accept all kinds of information. Yeah, well, it takes humans 4 years to get a bachelor's degree, 3 in the fastest, and learn everything. An AI can do it within an hour, probably. It's about the pacing. Not to mention new info keeps getting updated in real time, and some people stop learning as soon as they graduate from uni or formal education. We don't see any urgency. There is. The current state of the world is broken. We need policies to fix them. However, let alone being executed, the policies still aren't being released. Government hasn't stated why AI is better than humans. We have. More effective, not biased, up to date, intelligent, and well knowledge. Result isn't perfect, but it's okay because humans are dynamic and learn from our mistakes. Okay, AI can't progress automatically, but we can just insert these new informations and the things we've learned from them. How hard is that? Opposition seems to have misunderstood the running of our system, as information that they used to base their policies off of doesn't inherently breach further privacy, as there are data that have so far are available publicly in the status quo. Last is how too much empathy is inherently bad, because, for example, in feminism to end rape culture, they propose burden of proof so that people can just freely point fingers at rapists without providing concrete proof, causing a lot of false accusations. Quoting errors in AI and stuff, as just like humans, AI does have quoting errors in people and in AI and stuff is unfair. As just like humans, AI does have a margin of error, but said margin of error is bigger on their side of the house, as humans make more mistakes and their performance are not consistent. Also, egos prevent them from doing better, from acknowledging their mistakes. They have so far refused to engage in our take on how emotions are going to lead to biases, dismissing it. Racism is just an example of how these biases may happen. Continuing to our arguments, we came to the agreement of AI replacement because of the 3 main points of our arguments that my teammates have relayed before: emotions, information, and policies. First thing is emotion. Emotions can't be separated. Humans, even in a developed world now, emotion in decision making, especially in something with a scale as big as a whole nation, has been found to be detrimental. Emotions hinder the making of the most rational and proportionate decisions that can be, especially negative emotions like greed, biases, personal preferences, hate, racism, and such. Those things have been found to delay and even stop decisions or laws to be made into reality when the urgency is clear. Even when the law does pass, the execution is bad and filled with loopholes because the vested interest is inherently bad. The government the human government doesn't want to doesn't actually want to pass the law. They just want the other party to just shut up while still being able to somewhat manipulate the law to their own benefits. Who feels emotion most? Human, which is why having AI design and ultimately decide policies would be the best possible scenario. Which comes to my second point, that is policy. Policies designed and executed by the AIs would be the most effective, fair and proportionate to all the parties involved, meaning that no one would be unfairly harmed by the implementation of it. And the sites that usually gets to get away with things and reap many benefits from these loopholes in the policies won't get that. Those policies won't have any loopholes because by human errors, as we will further discuss in my third point, these policies will also be executed by AI who are rational and logical. Their only concern is what's best for the humanity. They have no inherent need to fulfill biases, needs for greed, nor internalized preference. As the implementation is also overseen by the AIs under the government's watch, they can also be quickly as possible be revised depending on the relevancy and need that the current situation requires. Real world example is to have a law in police handling that treats people regardless of race equally. Cops who went out of the line would have to own up and be held responsible, while minorities would no longer be discriminated against as they currently are being so in the status quo. Why is that? Because that is what is rational and best for humanity according to the programmed AI. No, speak up. Third is information. AI is equipped with the
Go ahead,
technology of
please.
algorithms and connectivity. Go ahead then.
If AIs can be cops and cops can murder people, does that mean AI is justified to murder people for what they believe is good?
No, because that is programmed by the humans, and humanity still exists within the AI. We never said that we eliminated humanity in it. Continuing to our third point, which is information. AI is equipped with the technology of algorithms and connectivity to a universal database where everything and anything can be accessed, and the available data are integrity are guaranteed. Therefore, they are able to make the most informed decisions ever based on to base their policies off of. Because unlike humans, they have the access to all the trusted information and the abilities to skim through everything without missing anything, all the while updating it in real time. The policies that come out of them will then be the fastest, most informed possible, rational, fair, and up to date to the current situation, because that is what is the most urgent. The beauty of AI is that it is ever developing and is constantly getting refined to be as sophisticated as possible, addressing their take on the AI as they are constantly updated by humans. As such, they learn from the data incorporated into them in real time faster. It is inherently not perfect, but by putting the stake onto something as important as the running of the world, constant improvement would have to be made constantly. Where does human lie in all of this? Well, they don't have the final say, but humans are there to oversee the AI's planning and decision making. They are to make code, give input, and such as they live through it, but their emotions can't dilute the final decisions as they do not have the final say. Humans who are behind the running of things are kept in check by the people, including their ego. With this, there would be less conflict and finger pointing between the humans, because who is there to blame the AI? Well, they did what they have to do. This would be how we eliminate. Sorry. This would be how we eliminate. Compared to theirs, this would be how we eliminate the worst case scenario of AI misses. Compared to their side of the house, they do not possess a centralized system. Therefore, no matter how good or ideal the policy is, well, the execution will still be worse on their side of the house, because on our side of the house, the AI system is centralized. Therefore, any mistakes can be quickly fixed. Our side of the house will, therefore, to conclude our arguments, our side of the House will have the most proportionate and informed policy, smooth execution of them, and the betterment of the society. That would be all from me as the third speaker of my party. For elaborated reason, we propose broadly. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for the third speaker from the government team. They spent 8 minutes and 9 seconds. And now moving on, I call upon the third speaker from the opposition team, Mr.
Hello.
Gilran.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
All right, please give me some time. Okay, my form of POI would be in the chat. I will respond if I have some time. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to try to summarize what the government has to say, rather than I'm going to summarize what we have to say. The government said that they would let the AIs handle humanity because humans can't even sustain justice for themselves because of emotional interferences and lack of judgmental behavior itself.
But what the government doesn't think is that humans aren't exactly the same. Making AIs as the judge will never achieve optimum impact for fairness. In the government's case, AI will handle the lives of emotional included human beings, which is already illogical in the first place, regardless of the perfection of the AI itself. In this very world, we have never seen a law being implemented by AI, but instead, we as human beings are the ones who control the AI itself. AI is functioned to help human beings, not to handle human beings. Secondly, the government put out a suggestion that human beings tend to put their self-interest first, but without their consent, they do not even think about how self-interests actually play a role on how judgment is forced. How dare would you try to put AIs to handle cases like murder with no clear evidence on how it was happened in the first place? Laws are implemented by getting the most evidence whether the proofs are enough to actually decide that the defendant actually did that murder. But what AI does is actually with binary logic decides whether it is logically true or false without even thinking about the emotional impact of not only the defendant but its victims, even if humans can still interfere in the judgment process. The government said that AIs they are going to implement will not only be prone to errors, but government also said that in case of malfunction, there will be human beings who would stand by there and with their expertise fix the AI in case something happens. What we're actually seeing is that how the government can't even justify the claim that their AIs will be perfect, but instead countering their own statement. They are saying that humans are inherently less intelligent than AI, then why can AI even fix itself? The government said that AIs are more updated than humans and humans can't keep up with the information. While at the same time, we all know that AIs rely heavily on data. And from whom will the AI get the data? Human beings. Humans are keeping up with changes while AIs just wait there for any update by human beings themselves. Who is actually up to date here? If AIs can't handle information more fairly than humans, then why in the first place AIs still need data from human beings? Dependency matters here. And if human beings still make flaws, then making flaws to the AI also makes the AI make flaws. The government claimed that the opposition never considered personal privacy. But what they did not know is that personal privacy is the very concept of emotion. If the government was going to apply the emotionless AIs, then why they are even considering personal privacy as a case? We have said that in order to make a policy, discussions are needed not only to bring the most perfect form of data to the AI itself, but to actually seek a way on how proper a judgment should be implemented. Judgment will never be perfect and able to satisfy two sides, regardless of how its strength of its force would be. Why actually put something emotionless to handle the emotional ones? The government claimed that their case was to actually prevent things like racism at the first place. But what they did not realize is that judgment actually comes after things have happened. They never explained how the development of AIs would be, not only on how the execution would have been, but on how the troubleshooting would be, and even more important, how the data would be gathered. Making policy requires checks and balances, and also attention to relevancy and implementation. The government only cares about the point that judgment should be served illogically. But what they did not think on is how the impact would be felt on the party that is going to feel the effect, that is human beings. They said that they are going to not only eliminate, they are not going to eliminate humanity, but by taking away humans' rights to actually decide and judge, they are actually violating the concept of human rights. Our stance remains the same. We think that AI is not the solution to being the executor, world's affairs, and the lives of the people. We will stick with the status quo. The burden of proof is the same. We as opposition only need to prove why the government's AI should not execute those things. There's likely going to be governments adopting a system developed by international resources, and which we have seen that suggests a few things. AI is a developed technology. They said that AI is going to be more perfect than humans, which means that it is going to be limited of capabilities of the people who design it, etc. What kind of policy is going to be used for the AI? They've said that this is going to have big implications, such as for anything like for distribution, wars, partisan legislation, legal rights, etc. And this debate does not exist with a vacuum. There are going to be parties involved here. First is that the world is very dynamic. World is not static. And logical fallacies often happens with a dynamic sense of world. That means problems are not only evolved instantaneously with an unpredictable manner, but that acting on the problem also changes the way you are going to approach the problem itself. Now, The government interests are made up of humans that have vested interests. Externally, they are likely going to be interested in global hegemony and using this AI as a way to have global power. We do not see on how this AI is going to be global, and that means that it's going to be a world where countries are competing with AI, and that means that the AI is also going to be involved in international affairs. Internally, governments are likely going to use this to keep power over the people. The current party voted in a place where it's likely going to want to keep the power. We can see today that often political opinions to like to leverage algorithms on social media. The trend is that security, the inherent concern for personal data is growing. People are not likely comfortable with a nation's surveillance state, and which we have actually explained by the second speaker. The humanitarian concerns must be in the place. Most people are unlikely going to feel safe having their lives dictated by AI. This means that there's going to be a massive public backlash. And you can look at the example like China's social credit system. If the AI decides that you are going to redirect resources away from a specific community to harm the cater to benefit the majority, and if you can just edit that, that means that it is just going to be a reflection of human sentiment coded to be fixed. Then social movement said that it is impossible to cater with everyone. That is the nature of the world because there are human emotions. There will be people against the policies that exist, even if humans implement it in the first place. And by the comparative manner, people will still make imperfect policies. But by the authority will not be centralized to a single AI. You can't have AI to try to burn the proof on how the legislation to be placed in the first place. And our goal is that we're okay with the current use of AI. That is, we control the AI, not the AI control ourselves. And the AI is functioned not only to help us cope with our daily lives, but we have the authority to actually program that AI to be used for any reason, anything other than policy making, even implementation. That's why we are proud to oppose the motion that is proposed by the government. Thank you.
Thank you for the third speech from the speaker from the opposition team. That spans 7 minutes and 14 seconds. Now I call upon the reply speaker from the opposition team, Mr. Christopher.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I will be starting my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. Dearest adjudicators, tonight we will show how opposition has provided a worthy case in this debate. Let's start with a point of characterizations and a couple of main clashes to discuss. First, note that the government has an over-idealized depiction of what making a policy is in this debate, that there will always be a perfect choice that has no harms. We as opposition absolutely reject that idealism. We gave a more contextualized, rooted world with mixed motivations of actors and movements and conflict, and a key contribution of how decisions are inherently sacrifices that will always result in the harm of one party or another. This is basic trolley problem, guys. Moving on, let's go to the first clash. Who will have a more fair and effective execution of policy? Let's analyze the first point carried in this debate. Government proposed that AI is going to be free from personal interest. Now, the opposition has already responded to this, that AI is always going to be flawed by the developers of it, so emotional bias is not possible to detach. Note that government's mechanism is actually in line with this logic because they said that the data that is provided to the AI are published journals, published information, and the question is who wrote those? Obviously humans. Next, the government said that it would be kept in check by the people, but never elaborate on how people would have access to the AI's decision making. Clearly, opposition already showed how it's likely um, authoritative groups such as the governments is going to have exclusive access to utilize this AI, and any kind of democratic process is not really mechanized by government, therefore it's not guaranteed. And give opposition team give a good example of how in the present day, China's social credit system, which is a prototype of an AI government, is already more harmful than any kind of benefit the government wants to propose. We think the technicality is pretty solid by opposition here. Moving on to the second tipping point, execution of the law. The government proposed that the AI is going to make more informed policies that cater to majority faster, but is faster better? Opposition pointed out the benefit of AI having access to information comes back to the human authors, which takes time to publish. So the benefit of faster pace of information is not as big as government wants you to believe. Second of all, opposition illustrate how the risk is so great when AI execute mistake because it is so effective at executing things instantaneously. It can commit mistakes that are disastrous, even irreversible, affecting international war, leading to death and hunger, which was begun from the first speaker. Gove tried to mitigate that, oh, AI can be corrected, but how can you correct the people's lives who are already lost? Op has the exclusive benefit that bureaucracy is good because it buffers the separation of powers from a singular concentrated authority, which is okay because human lives are something that are worth the time, worth the politics to discuss because their value is immeasurable. We don't see how the benefits of Gov rushing policies is worth the harms of losing human lives, which makes OP have a convincing argument on this point of humanity. Finally, the tipping point of justification, a very principled point in this debate, is Gov's claim that it's fair and that nobody will be harmed. Opposition was the team who pointed out that AI security policies cannot be removed from at least having some harm from the inherent nature of having to hoard data, authority, and power to be able to even be prototyped due to the technology. Governments try to skirt that, oh, AI can just be edited and the access can be controlled, but then that's contradictory to how they say, oh, AI will have a vast database removed from human bias and interference. Because if you can edit it and if you can select the information that the AI has, then it's not, removed from human bias and it has to, collect data from somewhere. That is the privacy. And finally, I reminded you it's impossible to cater everyone. Characterizing how zero harm is impossible realistically. The root of what government wants cannot be realized. Furthermore, the contradiction in logic is that AI will not be able to harm humans to make decisions. If the humans are criminals and this is a war, does that mean the AI will suddenly not be able to function? If then governments mechanism of why AI is an actor who is justified to handle and policies that revoke the rights of human beings to preserve the rights of other human beings to make other decisions simply cannot run in this debate. That's why we believe that opposition is the team that makes the most sense. Vote for op. Thank you.
Thank you for the reply speech from the opposition team that spans 4 minutes and 38 seconds. And now to end this debate, I call upon the reply speaker from the government team, Ms. Salsabila.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Madam Chair, their BOP here isn't only to prove why our mechanism is flawed, but their BOP here is to prove why the existing problem that exists in status quo that we propose actually solvable under the top of the House. From their first speaker and their last speaker, they never actually explained to you why all the problem, like racism, all the problem, like selfish interest, in and in itself can be solved under the top of the House. Because we proved to you from our first speaker and the third speaker that this is something that is inherently detrimental towards the policy making that has the interest to actually cater to to the community, right? We believe, but still, if you're still unsure why we win this debate, I have 2 points of questions on my on this speech. First, I'm going to talk about the human emotions, whether we need it or not, and secondly, I'm going to talk about the implementation, which side actually better implement all of the policy and all of the execution. So now, go to the first side. Let's talk about the human emotion. Government come up here and we tell you how human emotions leads to human error, right? Because it irrationalizes their decision because there's an interpretation of human sentiment when it comes to policy making. That's why there's bureaucracy long bureaucracy that takes a really long time. That's why people are putting their selfish interest on the policy making because it doesn't in line with their value, for instance, right? We prove to you that this is something that cannot be changed under the top of the House because firstly, most people under the top of the House are people in power, and secondly, these people already internalize their value. That's why, like, boomers cannot exactly understand why it's bad to be homophobic, why it's bad to be sexist under the top of the House, right? Therefore, we need this AI. But the problem is, all of our idea like that is never been actually responded as to why this is something that can be solvable under the top of the House. Therefore, still these ideas still stand, right? But the second thing is they try to contest the idea that okay, human is better because they can keep up with the changes and things are really contextual and stuff like that. They never actually tell us why this is inherently important, but we told you why this is something that is better in our side of the house. Because we proved to you that human in and of itself has limited capacity and have varying diligence, varying intelligence from each person to person, right? It means that people cannot exactly perceive like so many information at the same time. Different with AI, we prove to you that AI are manufactured exactly to process data and use the data to calculate and create a good policy to begin with. Therefore, it's their job, and therefore they are able to do it better, even though it's not perfect. But at least it's better than human. That's why that idea still stands. But the second thing is we their their whole mechanism is relying on the idea of empathy, right? But they never actually tells you why empathy is inherently something that's important. Because we told you that regardless it's gonna be bad. Firstly, no empathy means that it will lead to racism. But secondly, with not wait no sorry with empathy it can lead to like how feminism trying to push the idea of reverse burden of proof, for instance, the fact that it will make it easier for people to accuse those people who's actually not at fault. This is something that at the end of the day not gonna in line with their interest to actually protect the society and all of this stuff. So actually that's why we win this class. But then secondly, on the idea of implementation, right? We believe that in our side of the house, we tells you that this AI going to create policies based on their existing data without any sort of intervention of human sentiments and human emotions that inherently exist in their side of the house, right? We told you that the execution is going to be much better because they only focuses on the implementation and they only have one job to execute this policy to begin with. Therefore, there's no like mistreatment to the black community that actually exists in status quo right now, right? True that maybe racism exists in both sides of the house, but at least we try to prevent it as much as possible, rather than under the side of the house who don't give any sort of um like alternative as to why under the side of the house they can be better. And secondly, they try to say that we will be controlled by detector. Firstly, we already told you that we're talking about like democracy and people want to be elected, therefore they won't do that. But secondly, if there's injustice happen, we already told you that there will be intervention of UN, for instance. And thirdly, I think it's much better when it comes to AI because it is centralized. It means that if there is a problem, you can go against it at once, right? Different under the side of the house, regardless how perfect the policy is, when people who's actually on the ground who tries to execute it have varying value, have varying sentiments, it is not going to be perfectly implemented. Therefore, it is better in our sub house, and I'm happy to say we win this debate.
All right, thank you for the last speech and replies from the reply speaker of the government team that spans 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Okay, since this is a silent round, all of the members from both the government team and opposition team can return to the debaters hall to wait for their instruction. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for the debate. Thank you, Siko.
Thank you,
Smile.
Siko.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thank
You
you
guys did great. You
semuanya.
guys did great.
Thank you for the debate.
Oke, halo, selamat malam teman-teman debaters semua. Thank you banget udah menjalankan final dan perebutan juara ketiga buat masing-masing mata lomba di debat bahasa Indonesia dan bahasa Inggris. Mau menginfokan bahwasalnya dengan demikian maka berakhirlah rangkaian mata acara lomba debat OIM UI tahun 2021 untuk mata lomba debat bahasa Indonesia dan bahasa Inggris. Thank you so much buat partisipasinya. Untuk pengumuman juara 1, 2, 3 serta Best Speakers akan diumumkan di Grand Closing OIM UI 2021 di hari Minggu 14 November 2021 jam 7 sampai selesai di YouTube. Oke? Jadi buat teman-teman semua udah diperbolehkan untuk meninggalkan Zoom dan Sampai jumpa di hari Minggu tanggal 14 dan good luck everyone buat resultnya. Thank you semua.
Thank you semua.
Terima kasih Kak.
Thank you, Kak.
Thank you partisipasinya guys.
Thank you.